Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we're taking a look at GoCollect's hottest trending comics for the week of May 29th. Now, for those who don't know, GoCollect puts out weekly articles. They analyze the hottest selling comic books based on volume of sales and sudden increase in movement in the market. So think of these as the 5 most liquid books this past week. But before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, doing those things, I would appreciate it. Of course, this article is written by Matt Tuck. I will put a link in the description if you guys want to do your own reading, but I will break it down for you. And coming in here at the number 5 spot is a cool one to see, one that I don't remember being on this list ever in the history of times that I've been covering this video. But of course, we're talking about Battlestar Galactica, number 1, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 73rd slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 1979, written by Roger Mackenzie. That would be the first Battlestar Galactica IP in comic book form. Now, as Matt points out in the article, Battlestar Galactica has already been announced that it's set to get a movie series coming up and a television series coming up. And that's got a lot of people really excited about this IP and this brand. I myself am somebody who really loved the Edward James Olmos Battlestar Galactica series. I thought that that was one of the best shows, best sci-fi shows to come out in, say, the last 20 years or so. So I'm very hopeful that, the baton will be passed to a successful Battlestar Galactica TV show coming up. And it'll be interesting to see what this IP can do. Obviously, Battlestar Galactica has a pretty big fan base, has had, very successful movies and franchises before, but, it still feels like it's always been a step below that of, Star Wars and Star Trek and those sort of big sci-fi properties. So a lot of people are thinking that this book right here might be kind of a sleeper spec book in some kind of way. Imagine if, we kind of get Battlestar Galactica coming out and the movies are, popping off and the TV shows are popping off. Imagine what that'll do to a book like this. So a lot of collectors are thinking now is a really good time to buy this thing because it really isn't all that expensive. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. Census has it at 1,977 universal copies. I think that there's probably a lot more out there. Probably not a book that is too popular to be slabbed. 9.9s have 1 on the census, 9.8 has 628. Fair market value only 140, 30-day moving 150. So really not a bad entry point into a 9.8 book. You can see that this book, has had a similar journey to a lot of other books, spiking in COVID and then having its major corrections. And for the longest time was actually fairly flat. I mean, all the way back, to 2016, all the way through 2020 was roughly around the same price. And only now is it starting to get a little bit more of attention. And I think that has a lot to do with the, of course, cultural impact of the IPs coming to screen. Then down here at the bottom, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you can see them being sold around that $10, $15, maybe $25 range, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's move on now to the 4th hottest trending comic of the week. And the 4th hottest trending comic of the week is one that I have a really soft spot in my heart for. This one right here is Longshot, number 1, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 58th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 1985, written by Ann Nocenti, that would feature the first appearance of the X-Men character known as Longshot. Now, Longshot, in my opinion, has always been a little bit X-Men adjacent, kind of on that C to D tier level when it comes to X-Men characters, but it always felt like there was a lot of potential for this character to, become more of a superstar or a breakout star or one that a lot of comic book collectors actually really love. And so I think of this book as, having a lot of potential. Obviously, it's a Copper Age book. There's going to be more risk with this one. There's a lot of copies out there, and how much of a fan base will there truly be with a character like this? But you never really know. There's been a lot of talk right now about how Longshot, with Mojo World would be an excellent Disney Plus series. You could possibly bring in a character like this. And, if the show is wacky enough and zany enough and really outside the box, that could bring in a lot of fans into the Longshot character because he actually is pretty cool as sort of this, wild, I suppose you could call him a swashbuckler, kind of pirate, Han Solo rogue type figure. So I think that there's a lot of potential for him to be very charismatic and for a lot of comic book collectors to jump on the Longshot bandwagon. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. Census has it at 1,749, definitely a lot lower than a lot of Copper Age first appearance books, kind of around this time. But again, probably not a book that is often slabbed. Although I think that, if we did see him coming to a TV series, we would see a massive massive increase in the amount of books going to C2C. 9/8 have 551 on the census, fair market value 350, 30-day moving 300, and that's kind of, starting to shape out to be kind of the floor value for a first appearance kind of copper age book of a character of this ilk is right around that 300 spot. Of course, this is a book that has had spikes in the past where a lot of people were specking on this character coming to the X-Men, the Fox franchise, way back when it had its big shoot up in 2021, and now it's had its massive pullback. And people are starting to think, if I can get this book around the $300 level, that's really not too bad. I mean, certainly it's more than the 2020 price, but again, a first appearance of a character, one that is an X-Men character that I love, doesn't seem that bad if you're somebody who actually digs Longshot. Then, of course, down here at the bottom, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies, typically they sell around that $20 to $30 to maybe $40 range, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's move on now to the third hottest trending comic of the week. And the third hottest trending comic of the week is one that is kind of a repeat hot trending comic that we are seeing here. But this one, of course, is Thor number 134, actually minus down one spot, now sitting in the 36 slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 1966, written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby, that would feature the first appearance of the High Evolutionary. Now, as Matt points out in the article, even though this book is down one slot, he wanted to include it on the trending list because of the fact that it's actually pretty impressive that this book has been able to hold its roughly around its same spot, considering that it's a Silver Age book, which, typically in these types of lists don't have as much of a volume usually selling week after week after week. And also, we're now weeks removed from the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but there still seems to be a demand for this character, which I think is a testament to how well the High Evolutionary was portrayed in the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie. I mean, this is actually having the effect that you would think movies would have on certain comic books, where people go into a movie, they see a character, they say, hey, this character is actually really, really cool. I would like to own that comic book. And that's actually having its effect on Thor 134. So there's a lot of demand out there in the market. Now, that's not to say that this book is hitting record high prices all across the board. That is certainly not the case. But there is, people who are thinking, maybe it's a good time to add Thor 134 back into my collection, especially when there's been a lot of talk and discussion about how the High Evolutionary was actually saved by Drax. There's been some VFX artists that have pointed out certain frames in the movie, and James Gunn himself actually said that the High Evolutionary did not die. So a lot of people are thinking, hey, this character was really great. The fans really, responded to him, and maybe there's going to be more storylines with him in the future. And I actually think that they set it up perfectly for him to actually wear his helmet the next time he shows up in the MCU. So this is definitely a very, very cool book and the third hottest comic of the week. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. Census has it at 1,610 universal copies. Really not that much, but it's still not a book that is lighting up the lamps in terms of record prices. 9/8 have 7 on the census, 9/6 is 17. But let's take a look at the 9/2s that actually has a 30-day moving, 55 on the census, fair market value 1,800, 30-day moving 1,820. So this is actually a book that has trended up, due to the movie. And in fact, that 1,820 sale is actually the highest price in grade for this book, where some of the previous highs was 1,620, and then you had a 1,500 back in 2019. So there you can see that the demand for certain characters has actually gone up based on the success of the film. Then the 8.0 range here, 114, 30-day moving is 350, 7.0s, 30-day moving 246, and then kind of like what we've been talking about, a lot of price compression and consolidation here in the mid-grade because there's a lot of people trying to get rid of those books. But of course, when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of them, now you can see them being sold around that $100 to $150 level, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's move on now to the second hottest trending comic of the week. And the second hottest trending comic of the week is, I got the soft spot for this one right here, ladies and gentlemen. A channel favorite comic book, Spider-Man number 7, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 27th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 2023, written by Dan Slott and drawn by Mark Bagley. That would be cover A of the series introducing the greatest character in the history of comic books, the first appearance of Spider-Boy. Now, of course, you guys know Spider-Boy set the world on storm. Everybody was looking to pick out Spider-Man number 7 the week that it came out. And there were actually a bunch of different covers that came out, in that week. Of course, we had the one that, is really the one that was most in demand, the top secret variant that actually had him on the cover. Then there was the Transformers variant. And then, of course, there was the sketch edition that featured Dr. Octopus. But this right here was actually cover A for the book. So this is the one that, kind of got overlooked in the shuffle. And, in my opinion, even though this book is showing up on the trending list, and as Matt points out in the article, it was bound to do that because anytime you have people, buying the Spider-Boy books, like now you have the people who are looking to complete their 9.8 sets. They got to have all the covers because Spider-Boy obviously is their favorite character because they fell in love with him from the 2 panels that were actually in this comic book. So, now they got to collect all of the versions of Spider-Boys that they can. We even got the second print, so people are looking to complete those sets, and this right here is cover A. Now, in my personal opinion, I think that if this book actually does go to the moon in 15 to 20 years time, I don't think that cover A will be the one that is most desired in the market. Although ironically, maybe there's more top secret variants out there that people have been slabbing versus this one right here. But the fact that Spider-Boy is not on the cover makes me think that this is really more of a collector book and less of a speculative investment book, if you actually want to call it that. But as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. 203 universal copies on the census. I feel like that's probably a lot lower than what we saw with the top secret variant. In fact, let me just quickly derail the video right now and confirm if that's the case. Yeah, you can see right here, the Spider-Man with the Spider-Boy on the cover has 2,352 universal copies on the census. So kind of ironically, the cover A is really, a lot lower in terms of its current census count, at least in terms of what CGC has. 9/8 have 190 on the census. 30-day moving is 95. This is a book that, even though this chart is showing that it has gone up in value, is really not the case. I mean, pre-screens were coming out around the $100 range, and now we're kind of seeing, mixed sales, 84, 76, 86, 106. And that's probably where this book is going to stay for quite a while because, there's just not going to be that much demand, although, people do want to fill out their sets, and that's kind of where the 9/8 sits. But if you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically now you can see them being sold around that $10, $15, maybe $20 range, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's go on now to the hottest trending comic of the week. And the hottest trending comic of the week is one that is back on the list this week, jumping up a whopping 21 spots. Of course, we're talking about Hulk #1, up 21 spots, like I already said, now sitting in the 21st slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book written by Jeff Loeb that came out in 2008 that would feature the first appearance, and I'm doing the quotation marks, if you guys can imagine from the tone of my voice, first appearance of Red Hulk, but in actuality, it is the first cover appearance of Red Hulk, or maybe you would want to call it the first cameo appearance of Red Hulk. Now, as I'm sure you guys know, it's been inferred and kind of leaked out, or maybe it's actually been officially announced that Red Hulk is going to be in Captain America 4, New World Order, that of course is starring Anthony Mackie. And we've recently been getting a lot of set photos from the shoot where we're seeing a lot of, Serpent Society members. I think we had, Seth Rollins of WWE. Looks like he's going to be playing a Serpent Society member. So maybe with that kind of, a set photo leak going on, a lot of people are getting excited once again for Red Hulk. Of course, we're about to get Indiana Jones, the fifth movie that's going to come out starring Harrison Ford. We now know that Harrison Ford is going to be playing General Ross, aka Red Hulk, in the film. So maybe through all of those touch points, that's kind of got comic book collectors thinking once again, hey, what are the prices of Hulk #1? Maybe I should jump on this book right now. And that's probably one of the reasons why you're seeing it move so much in the market. Now, it is kind of funny that, this is the cover appearance of Red Hulk, but he's actually not in the comic book. It's actually Hulk #2, where he actually starts to get involved in the storyline. But, cover is king in this industry, and that makes this book the most desired one in the market. And as we dig into the values for this one, let's take a look at some of the numbers here. Census has it at 3,756 universal copies. 9/9s actually have 3 out there. Kind of interesting to see that. 9/8s have 1,491, fair market value 300, 30-day moving 326, slightly on an uptick from where it was just about a month ago. But you can see this is a book that has had its peak prices in 2021, its pullback, but is again still healthily sitting above its 2020 price and definitely above prices even before that. 9/8 rate only at the 40%, so not terribly hard to find. There's still probably a decent amount of raws out there, and then drops off quite a lot after the 9/8 level, where you don't really see it slabbed here at the low grade. But when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies, typically you can see them being sold around that $75, $80, maybe $100 range, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Those were Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week. Do you guys have any of these books? Let me know what you think about the list. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. See you on the next video.